The city streets were unusually quiet that night, the kind of quiet that made every distant sound echo against the buildings. Neon signs flickered lazily above closed shops, and the hum of distant traffic was the only rhythm in the emptiness. John, a taxi driver who had spent more than 12 hours behind the wheel, felt a familiar ache in his back and legs. His cab smelled faintly of coffee and the leather seats were worn from years of use, but he loved this city. He knew that somewhere out there, someone might need him, even if only for a ride or a kind word. As he turned a corner, his eyes caught a frail figure under a flickering streetlight. An elderly man, hunched and trembling, seemed to have no place to go. His coat was thin, shoes scuffed, and hands shaking. But it was his eyes that caught John's attention, the mix of worry, fear, and resignation that told him this man had endured far more than the night's cold. Without a second thought, John slowed his cab and pulled over. "Need a ride, sir?" he asked, trying to keep his voice warm despite his own exhaustion. The man hesitated for a moment, glancing at the empty streets behind him, then nodded slowly. There was a silent dignity in the way he climbed into the cab, clutching a worn leather bag as if it were his only remaining treasure. John started the meter but left it running silently. Sometimes, he thought, the simplest acts, a ride, a smile, a listening ear, could make more difference than any grand gesture ever could. The cab moved steadily through the city streets, passing glowing streetlights and late-night diners. The man remained quiet, staring through the window at blurred city lights. John glanced at him occasionally, noticing the way the man shivered despite the jacket he wore. The silence was heavy but not uncomfortable. Sometimes, people needed quiet more than words. "Here, take my jacket," John offered suddenly, leaning forward. The man looked at him, startled, eyes widening in disbelief. His hands shook as he accepted it. "Thank you, no one's ever been this kind," he whispered, voice low but trembling. John smiled softly. "It's nothing. Everyone deserves a little kindness." For the next several minutes, the old man spoke little. Yet John felt a weight in the air, a story unspoken, a life filled with hardship that the city rarely paused to notice. He tried small talk, commenting on the lights, the hum of the late-night traffic, even the strange quiet of the city streets. But the man remained absorbed in his own thoughts. John respected it, feeling an odd sense of connection, an invisible bond formed from a simple, quiet act of caring. As they passed an empty park, John noticed the man's eyes linger on a bench where a mother once played with her child. Something in the way he stared suggested that life had been far kinder to others than to him. John silently prayed that this ride, this small gesture, might somehow bring a sliver of comfort, even if only for tonight. The cab came to a stop in front of a small, unassuming building tucked between two shuttered shops. It looked ordinary, one of those places people passed without noticing, but something about the man's pause suggested deeper significance. He took a deep breath and clutched his bag tightly as if summoning courage. "This is it," John said, his voice soft, almost hesitant. The man handed him a few crumpled bills, and John shook his head. "Keep it. Consider it a gift," he said. The man's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to thank you," he whispered, voice breaking. John nodded and watched as the man disappeared inside. He assumed it was just another lonely night for someone in need, a life he'd briefly touched. But as John drove away, he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter wasn't ordinary. Something about the man, the way he moved, the weight behind his eyes, suggested a story far larger than a simple cab ride. John thought about the countless lives he'd touched before, the small moments of human connection, and he wondered if tonight's passenger might leave a ripple far beyond the city streets. The cab hummed along quietly, carrying him toward the unknown future of a story yet to unfold. The next morning, John started his day with the usual routine, picking up fares, navigating through morning traffic, and listening to passenger stories. But something in the air felt different, almost like the city itself was holding its breath. Later that day, while taking a short break, he turned on the television. A headline flashed across the screen, making his heart skip a beat. "Local hero saves struggling business, owner offers unbelievable reward." John froze. The man from last night, the frail, quiet passenger, could it really be him? Curiosity surged through him like electricity. He felt compelled to find out. Back at the building, the receptionist greeted him warmly. "You must be Mr. John," she said. "The man you helped last night, he's the owner. He wanted to meet you personally." John's pulse quickened. The elderly stranger he had assumed to be just another lonely soul was Samuel Green, a businessman quietly struggling to save his company from collapse. Samuel stepped forward, eyes filled with gratitude. "You helped me when I was at my lowest," he said. "I will never forget your kindness." John was stunned. A small, ordinary gesture, offering a ride, giving a jacket, had touched someone whose life carried tremendous influence. He realized in that moment that no act of kindness is ever wasted. Samuel's story unfolded. He had been fighting to keep his business afloat, quietly bearing the weight of financial ruin. Employees depended on him, families relied on his company, and yet, he had almost lost hope. The simple act of kindness John had shown, the jacket, the ride, the human warmth, reminded him that genuine care still existed in the world. Moved, Samuel offered John an opportunity that would forever change his life. A partnership in a new project, designed not only to secure John's future but also to make a meaningful difference for many others. John was speechless. I didn't do anything extraordinary," he said. "I just helped a man." Samuel smiled warmly. "That is the extraordinary part. Kindness is small, but its ripple effects are immense. You may never know how far a single act can reach, yet it can change lives in ways you never imagined." John felt a surge of emotion, gratitude, awe, and disbelief. His ordinary life, filled with long hours and simple routines, was suddenly illuminated by the extraordinary power of one small choice. From that day forward, John's life was transformed in ways money could never measure. The recognition, the partnership, and the security for his family were all blessings, yes, but more importantly, he carried a renewed understanding of humanity's potential for compassion. The city streets, once just a place of work and routine, became a canvas where small acts could leave enormous ripples. A kind word, a gesture of care, a simple smile, these were the moments that shaped lives. John reflected on that night, on Samuel's quiet gratitude, and the invisible chain reaction that had begun with nothing more than a cab ride. So, the next time you see someone in need, remember this story. You may think your actions are small or insignificant, but they could touch hearts and change destinies. A single act of kindness can ripple farther than we ever imagine, and sometimes, the return comes when we least expect it. If this story touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to Heartfelt American Stories, where real-life tales of hope, inspiration, and human connection await. And remember, every small act of kindness has the power to rewrite someone's life story.